what we're going to be learning together is who are you and what do you want? They're two really simple, easy questions, right? But they're very, very hard to answer. And when I was asked those questions, I didn't know how to answer it. I said, who are you? Aaron Fraser. No, who are you? I'm a ginger with a mullet. Who are you, right? So who are you at the point of like, how would people look at you and describe you, right? From an outside point of view, how would people describe you? So we're going to figure out how to define that throughout this process, okay? Who are you? And what do you want? This is something that, for me, and I've seen this with lots of my students that, I've got to help create that success together with them, is when we say, well, what do we want? And we say, well, I want more money. Okay, cool. So what does that mean? Well, I want to be financially free. Okay, what does that mean to you? Because financially free to me may be a lot different than financially free to you, right? Well, I want to have time freedom. What the hell does that mean? Time freedom to do what? What are you doing in that time, right? Well, I want to do the things that I want to do when I want to do them. Well, what are those things that you want to do? And when do you want to be doing them, right? And who do you want to be doing it with, right? So defining on those two questions, they're simple questions, but starting to really dig into those and pull off the onion layers, it's going to help us understand ourselves throughout this process. And what we're going to do by figuring out our values, okay? So values. We're going to figure out what our values are, okay? And it's really cool as we go through this process, and you'll have a lot of big realizations. And for me, when I went through this process, I started to see so much that went on with my life on, like I rewinded and looked at all these things, and I started to understand where my values really sat and, what values I was injecting from other people and what values I was giving to other people with an expectation. So we'll get into a little bit, we'll break that down a little bit. So with values, what does it really mean, right? So values are a personal set of priorities. We all have our own personal set of priorities. We're all different, right? Some of us are fairly similar, but we all have different priorities and they all go down. So your hierarchy of values, so hierarchy meaning, the top, like the top of the mountain kind of thing, hierarchy, the top, in order from highest to lowest, okay? Hierarchy of values, they're all unique. They're all unique to each individual person. And when we can understand what these are for us, that helps us live within our purpose because we understand how to find those things and focus on those things, which creates inspiration. And when we're inspired, that's when we're excited to do the things that we're doing every single day, right? Some of us are very inspired to work as employees, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Good, bad, right, or wrong. There's a lot of people that are very inspired to be able to do that because they're helping people. They feel fulfilled. They're doing a job that they really, really enjoy. But sometimes people are doing that just because they're settling because they don't have a belief in themselves that they're worth anything more. So feel free to watch that announcement that I talk about Diamond Movement, where I was, because that's what happened to me, right? It's not that I hated my job, right? But I was just looking for something different. Now, that's going to be different for each and every individual. Some people love to work. Some people love to run businesses. Some people just love to just not work, right? It just really depends on who you are. I mean, who would like to live a life and never work, right? However, what happens when we do that for me is it starts to get pretty boring because we have no purpose, right? So we're going to help define that all. So your values are a personal set of priorities. Your hierarchy of values are unique to you. So feel free to write that down because it's really powerful. Your values predict your actions that you take every single day, okay? So the things that you are doing on a consistent basis in routine every single day is because of those are your values, okay? So we're going to break down all of those pieces. You have higher values and you have lower values. Your higher values are more of a priority, so you always focus on those first, okay? So let me know if that makes sense in the chat, whether you're watching a replay or whether you're watching it live. Let me know if this is making sense for you guys so far. We're going to get in a little bit more over the next few days because we're really going to dive in. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a specific set of 13 questions. Okay. So this is why it's important to have your pen and paper for the next few, because I really want you guys to write down the questions and we're going to answer them. It's very simple, very laid out. And by doing this, this is going to help us straight up define it all. So we're going to contextualize it. We're going to write it out together. And then from there, I'm going to show you how to go through all of that and figure out what is your highest priorities in your life right now and then you'll be able to see what isn't a priority. Okay. And this helps really understand who we are as people. Okay. Each individual person. Okay. So from there, that's really what we're going to dive in for the next, so the next 5 days. We're going to go through it. We're not going to do all 13 questions at once because I want to make sure that we go through them very specific. So we're going to keep this training nice and tight for you guys so I don't start rambling off because I'm really, really good at that. So my goal is to keep these trainings around 20 minutes, okay, 15 to 20 minutes, because I know you guys are busy. And this way we can really soak it all in throughout the days, okay? So your values, 13 questions. This is what we're going to be going over the next 5 days. So like I said, guys, pen and paper. Get that stuff ready for next time. Okay. Now from there, there's some other little pieces that I want to cover in today. So something that I've really taught my students, and especially a lot lately, because I was taught this from my mentors and the people teaching me how to be really successful with what I do, is this word called urgency. So urgency means, you know, when we have that thought, when we have that inspirational thought. So do you guys know what it means when you feel inspired? Who's been inspired before, right? You have an inspirational feeling or an inspirational thought, you know, you get that tingle up your spine and you're like, oh man, you know, that's a great idea. Or, oh man, that just feels like the right decision, right? Or, oh man, maybe I should go and talk to that person. Maybe it's a cute boy or a cute girl or something like that. And you're like, oh, and you get that tingle. You're like, oh man, right? When we use urgency and we capitalize on those moments, that's when really great things start to happen. And I've learned this from experience. For example, I've had this happen and it's actually kind of funny. I remember having a conversation with my brother a long time ago. So when we have inspired thoughts, you know, for example, I had an inspired thought once or a couple times where I was going to invent something. I decided I was going to get into inventing something and creating something and building it because the world needed this thing that I was going to invent. And what ended up happening is I just talked about it to everybody. I got inspired every time I came up with the idea and I would talk about it. I would just talk about it. I'd put it out there and be like, oh man, this is what we're going to build. This is what we're going to do, right? It's going to be great. And when we build this, it's going to help this and it's going to do this and it's going to be so cool for that. But what would end up happening from me is I would get this inspiration coming up, right? That's the universe or whatever, the power of the mind or whatever you want to say, telling me like, hey man, that's a great idea. You should go do this. Here you go. But I never had urgency to actually taking action. So because of that, what do you think happened? 5 months down the road, 6 months down the road, because I'm not taking any action towards actually creating what I'm wanting to create or following that inspirational feeling, whether, you know, like I said, maybe it's just a significant other, a relationship that you want to fix or that you want to create, right? Or you want to tell somebody something because you have that inspiring feeling or that inspiring thought. And what ends up happening is if we don't take action on it, it's gone. And then guess what? It goes to somebody else. So I watched that happen with, you know, thinking about creating an invention, right? I was going to create this thing. And all of a sudden, I'm not taking action towards it, even though I'm inspired as hell to create it, but I'm not taking any action because I was too scared to, right? I was fearful of this, right? So that's usually what happens. So the reason that we don't have urgency with the things that we're doing is we have this thing called fear, right? And you may have heard this kind of stuff like false evidence appearing real, right? False evidence appearing real, because our brains are always trying to figure out the end result of every situation. And if we haven't experienced it first, right? If we haven't physically experienced something first and it's new, what happens is we can create something called fear, because our brain starts doing something like, well, I don't know, this could happen, that could happen. We start resorting to the negative side of things and we get scared, right? And when we start getting scared, right, this doesn't happen. Action doesn't happen. And because action doesn't happen, right, even and then we don't have urgency. We're not being urgent to get it done. Okay, so with that being said, I want to show you a little thing that my grandma made me one day, and it's great. Can you see that? Fear is the cock blocker of dreams. I'm just kidding. My grandma didn't make this, but I thought this was pretty fitting, so I wanted to throw that in there. But it's totally true, because this little guy right here, even though it's completely false, because fear is created when we don't know the end result or the end outcome because we haven't experienced it first, then it just pulls everything back, right? Then all of this happens. We don't have urgency. We don't take action, and we don't capitalize on the things that are laying right in front of us, right? The opportunities that are right in front of us. So when we start to define our values throughout this process, it's going to create something super beautiful for everybody. Because I'm just going to exit this here. So when that starts to happen, right, and we figure out what our values are and we start living within those, now it's very easy for us because we have that inspiration to create urgency, right? Urgency in our minds, right? Because we're inspired. We'll recognize it now. We're aware of it, right? You're aware of that feeling because you know what it means now. That tingle down your spine, or those butterflies in your stomach, or whatever it is, right? And you're like, ooh, and you feel lighter, right? It's a great, great feeling. So when we start to recognize that and be aware of it, now we can create urgency, which means taking action. I like all my drawings around here, right? And we can start avoiding this, right? Because what's the worst that's going to happen, right? Depends on the situation, I guess. But a lot of the times, the reasons that we don't move forward with things, it's just some bullshit excuse that we're telling ourselves because it's false evidence appearing real. Okay, guys. So one other piece to today that I want to cover, because all of this training that you're going to go through has the potential of literally changing the trajectory, little tongue twister, has the potential of changing the trajectory of your life on where you want to go. Whether you stay doing what you're doing right now, or you decide to try something new, whether that's a new relationship, maybe that's a new business venture, maybe that's a new job, right? Whatever that is. Maybe that's a new hobby that you've always wished that you wanted to try. The only way that this will ever work for anybody, because I could sit here and ask my team, I could sit here on these Zooms for hours and hours and hours on end, and I could pump you guys full of value and ideas and knowledge, like hit you with the fire hose, right? But it's completely useless to you if you don't take responsibility for everything that you're doing, okay? So making sure that you realize, and this was a huge thing for me, realizing that the exact position that I was in was my responsibility. It was 100% my faults or my gains, right? And when I came to that realization that I was 100% responsible, because I'm the one that makes the choice, and making no choice is still making a choice. We have each individual one of us has full choice and decision on everything that we do, right? When we become responsible for everything that we do, for all of the goods and for all of the bads, It's this beautiful freeing thing, because we're not pointing fingers and blaming things on other people, because really it all comes down to us capitalizing and learning these things, learning how to live within our purpose by finding our values, right? Learning how to jump on inspiration, right? Learning how to trust this rather than to just use this, because we all know what this does is it tries to finish the loop to everything and find the end result, even when we have no idea what the end result's going to be, right? And even sometimes when we do, it's because we haven't experienced yet, because somebody else says that it's going to be okay. When we get up here, right, it creates fear, false evidence appearing real, right? And when that happens, we aren't urgent, we don't take action.